thousands and thousands of coaching calls, which equals thousands of lives impacted and thousands of people out in the crowd over the years. Arguably one of the top master sales trainers on the planet. Here with my homeboy, Bill Pipes. Bill, thanks for hanging out, brother.
What's up, John, man? Super stoked to be here, brother. So great way to start just an incredible week, man. You know?
Yeah, it's been a little bit wild, man. You know, I'm not going to do the, because I don't think anyone cares. I mean, I think we think, well, you know, I grew up in the mobile home and I did this. It all matters. But listen, people want to know what's going on. Let's dive in right now because I think that, you know, not from a promotional standpoint, but it gets into the work that you do. Talk to people about what you've got going on in the last 2 weeks, what you are personally working on and the reason for it and the timing of it. Just give us a stream of consciousness, because I think right now and probably through the end of time, because what we found is how much has really, everything's changed, but it's really the same.
All the same.
So
yeah.
Let us know what are you charging at right now and what's happening, man?
Dude, so honestly, back in September, October of last year, right, I started noticing and many marketplaces, because the fact, you know, just like you, coaching people all over North America, right, up into Canada, et cetera, just started noticing some changes, some micro changes that were taking place in the market. And I said, oh, is this us normalizing? Right. And, you know, it really wasn't for some of you, for most markets in September, October, there were those little micro changes where homes were sitting a little bit longer and rates were still low and everything was still going sort of crazy, but offers were dropping from 15 to 20 offers down to 4 to 5. And I said, here's our adjustment. Here's the normalization. Well, obviously we saw what happened there. November, December, January just went like bananas in terms of just sales and inventory and aggressiveness of the market, et cetera. But it made me, back in August, September, October, made my mind start to go, something's going to change here. You know, we can't have, you know, what have we had, John? We've had like the largest uptick in real estate, most bullish market that we've seen for the last decade. And I just started looking at it from an affordability standpoint and thinking about interest rates and everything else and going, when this market shifts and changes, and we got that little taste in September, October, are the agents going to be prepared in North America, right, the United States and Canada, right, to be able to actually weather the storm? And not just weather the storm, but also, are they going to be celebratory? Like, okay, I've made the changes, the adjustments, my strategies are in place, right, to be able to thrive, right, and not just survive the adjustment, right? Because I knew it was coming when I saw it in September, October, and bro, you know me, and those of you that don't, I have a rule in my life, and it's not just in business, it's just in life in general. Make decisions on data, not drama. Make decisions on data, not drama. And so that was like, I'm like, something's going to change. That was the little like precursor, right? So, and you know, here in Salt Lake City, man, I can tell you when it's going to snow, because the day before it gets really warm, right? We get a warm like pop where I can take the top down off of my car, have the convertible, drive around in the middle of summer. I was doing this yesterday. This morning I woke up, the projection is snow, right? Tomorrow, because you watch the pattern, you watch the data. If you watch the data and you watch the pattern, then you can predict what you need to do, or you can predict what's going to happen a little bit, and you can make the adjustments and changes. So with that being said, long story of why, you and Beer and myself said, we want to impact the ecosystem of real estate in North America, the 1.4, 1.5 million agents, and have as many of them prepared that when the market does normalize and change, that they're not left, as I love what you say, with the tide going out and they realize, oh, dang it, man, I don't have any pants on, right? And so we launched the this 12-week sales velocity course, man, and have you know 1,100 eyes. I think there's more eyes than that, because there's 40 teams in rooms with 20 to 30 people that are watching as well too. So I think we got, you know, I'm so excited because we got like 1,200, 1,300, maybe even 1,400, you know, agents that are now engaged in going back to the cornerstones of sales, and also beginning to be able to actually level in a new model of selling that is based upon the evolution of the consumer, who is more elegant, more educated, and has an expectation of personalization at this point.
So talk about what you've seen over the years the consumer's expectations. What have you seen the consumer's expectations be? Or
So
excuse me, evolve to?
here, it's very interesting, and I think everyone needs to understand this, that influence in today's world, and really that's something that I have prided myself on in educating myself, not in mastering, because I think you and I both have talked about this, and I want everyone to think about this. You're never going to completely master something. And if you do, then all of a sudden you're ripe. And when you're ripe, you're rotten. What that means is the minute you stop growing and you think you got it figured out, all of a sudden the rug, I guarantee, will get yanked out from underneath you. And I've had that happen. I've seen it happen to many agents as well, too. But if we talk consumer and consumer influence, like how to have influence, and I'm not talking like manipulation and persuasion, I'm influence. I think you and I have talked about this. Influence is, and sales at its core is, two people agreeing upon a course of action that is mutually beneficial or benefits the other individual, and you serve that individual, right? And in sales, we have to remove resistance out of the way, out of the equation. Well, how do you do that in today's world based upon the consumer? Well, here's what we know about the consumer. The consumer is spending more time online than they ever have researching who they're going to work with. The consumer expects things to be personalized, especially the millennial buyer and seller right now, which represents the largest portion of the population that we've ever seen. John, the millennials right now, guys, Trump, they are 31 to 32% of the percentage of the US population. At the peak, the baby boomers, who had an insane impact on GDP and the way that we actually conduct business, the baby boomers were 27% at their peak. So the millennials are driving this market, and the millennials are researching, and also all of us old fogies like myself at 50 are researching more than we ever have. We're more educated, whether that education is accurate or not. We have our own narratives based upon Google and all the research that we've done. We also want personalization. We don't want a one size fits all type of approach. We want to feel like we're special, right? And especially the millennials want that as well too, right? And here's the third piece to understand about the consumer. Now, this is when a buyer or seller finally reaches out to you after they've done their research of 6 to 7 to 8 weeks. That is normal, guys. I'm going to say that again: 6, 7, 8 weeks, normal research before they're going to make the call. When they make the call, 57% of their decision is already made. Over half is made based upon your digital imprint of how you show up as they're researching. That other 43%, right, which is the conversation and what you do, is based upon they're only interviewing one agent, right? That's the crazy thing, according to NAR, is what is it? It's 77 to 78% on average. The range goes up to 82% of people of consumers for the younger consumer is only going to interview one person. So when you get your at bat, you have got to be so skilled, so effective, have your dialogues down, connect, have rapport. All those fundamentals of sales need to be like a sharp, honed axe, right? Because I think Eminem said it best, you only get one shot, right? I mean, it's legit in today's world. You get one shot, you get that conversation. And if you mess it up and you don't create certainty and trust and respect and rapport with them, right, then they will go back, find somebody else, do the research again.
Where do you feel, if you're looking at a specific skill within that, where have you seen over the thousands of calls, presentations, one-on-one coaching sessions, every environment that you've been in to impact someone's sales career, where do you find are the key areas that people fall down the sales process?
I think there's two.
Okay.
The first one, I believe, guys and gals, there's more money lost, John, in follow-up than any other portion of the business, right? And that shows up in a couple of ways. Either number one, we never follow up. If you go back to Zillow and why Zillow moved from the premier agent model ultimately to the flex model, right, to the channel account model, was because over 50% of the inquiries on Zillow were never followed up with. And they didn't blame the agent, John, they blamed Zillow. And so Zillow's brand was, like with the consumer, was really dropping because no one was getting back. So number one is, like as an industry, we do a really poor job of following up with the leads, right, that come in for us, right? I think all team leads can actually look at that as a problematic challenge of making sure that the agents in an appropriate amount of time on your team are actually following up. Number two, we don't follow up consistently enough. I think most individuals are going to, and you can think about this, all of you that are listening for yourself, think about how many times you will follow up with a lead without getting any type of response before you give up, right? Before you say, oh, I'm going to let GGMS, I'm going to let Follow Up Boss, I'm going to let Boomtown, I'm going to let whatever, I'm going to let technology do the work for me, right? Where in the reality at the very beginning, the game is this. And I think this is what all of us need to recognize in follow-up is your dialogue, your approach for that first 7, 10, 14 days needs to be able to get to put enough effort, right? I mean, back in the day, Ben Kenny, who I sort of grew up with side by side with, right? At KW. Kenny had his 10 Days of Pain, I think it was called. Well, really, do you remember that? Do you remember that?
Hey, listen, I've got people that are still using it, and they're some of the best performers right now.
Well, I think, look, dude, here's what I think you and I talked about this, 22 to 24 touches before you really get some type of a response back. And, like is the number. And so I think you need to have a formatted strategy that embraces calls, voicemails, text, and emails, right? Where in those first 7 to 10 days, it's like 15 to 17. Different conversation or tactical touch points that you're having. At that point, this is really important. And I hope you guys are tracking on this. See, I look at it and I go, that first 7 to 10 days, I need to determine where that lead is in the funnel of decision. Are they what I call TOFU, which is top of the funnel, which is like 18 to 24 months out? Are they MOFU, which is middle of the funnel, which is like, they're 6 to 14 months ish, right? Are they BOFU, which is bottom of the funnel, which means they're gonna transact in the next 6 months. If we go back, John, and by the way, that's why that strategy needs to be very aggressive on follow-up right at the very beginning, because if you put enough effort, time, energy into it, meaning that you got, 10, 14, 20 touch points, text, email, voicemail, call during that time, and they don't respond, well, you can tag them and say they're probably top of the funnel right now, right? Because I put enough effort, energy, and touches out, reach outs out, that if someone is middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, they're going to inherently call me back or have some type of communication back with me, right? And if I get them on the phone, then I have a dialogue, whether it's the LP Mama or some other adjustments of that, which is finding out their level of motivation. Then let's go back to personalization. If I identify their time frame, the strategy I'm going to use on a middle of the funnel lead is going to be a little bit less aggressive than the strategy I use with the bottom of the funnel. And that's the personalization, right? Is to be able to determine which level of aggressiveness, and I don't mean aggressiveness like in anger, I mean aggressiveness in terms of cadence of which you're following up. Which level, how aggressively will I follow up with them? Because I can't use a bottom of the funnel process with a middle of the funnel lead. I'll scare them away. And I can't use a middle of the funnel process with a bottom of the funnel lead because I'll lose them from not enough attention. So that beginning, if we talk about why we're failing in follow-up, it's because we're not being, our approach that we're taking is not aggressive enough at the very beginning. Or number three, so number one was we don't follow up with them. Number two is that we're not, our strategy is not aggressive enough. And number three is because our dialogues just simply suck. Because our dialogues are horrible and we get them on the phone and we poop the bed, so to speak. So that when we finally do get them on the phone, have you practiced and internalized your dialogue? And is it one that inherently creates trust and respect and rapport and connection with them, so that they feel comfortable and certain that you're the agent, that you're educated enough, that your background and history speaks to you being able to actually serve them? And do you communicate in a manner that puts their mind at ease and makes them feel comfortable and certain with you? So I think that's where a majority of the money is lost, is in that process right there, to be able to convert leads over.
Really good. Well, here's a neat thing, Bill, with someone like yourself is sure you're this, and not as sure, like it's so minimalized. It's massive. Didn't know that I was going to be working with a celebrity, but I kind of knew that I was. But
vice versa, man.
Well, thanks. With that said, though, the neat thing though is you have, when I look at the dynamic at the high level, and when I say high level, like with intensity and volume of interaction you've had on the sales floor, in the trenches with agents, but also I would say equally though, I mean, you're just not in this one silo, working with team leaders too, coaching team leaders one-on-one. So we talk about the agents and what they need to do. I think the big one is the team leaders. How would you differentiate the team? And nothing's ever perfect, but how would you differentiate if you're looking at you're coaching me as a team leader, and you're saying, let me tell you about the team leaders who get their people to take the action, to constantly to internalize those scripts and those dialogues, and create or facilitate the condition where there's highly skilled agents versus the ones you watch and you love and adore, and they're great people, but that person doesn't get movement. That team leader, that broker owner doesn't get movement. Talk about the difference between those two leaders that you've observed.
For sure. And you know, it's interesting because I don't mind getting pigeonholed as the sales guy. In fact, I love it. It's what I actually, you know, it's, you know, I love seeing an agent come up to me that says, I was in your course 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I've had people reaching out to me. They're like, 10 years ago, I got in your course. I got into coaching. My life has fundamentally changed. I couldn't have done it without you. This is amazing. I mean, I love that. However, in the last, I would say 8 years, I made this transition into, yes, I'm still going to, you know, do what is passionate to me. But the new passion was because I had all these wonderful people that I was coaching who were at like 100, 125 transactions and them selling 80%. And they naturally began to grow into leaders. And so, you know, by sheer need, I evolved into a coach of leaders, a coach of teams. And so now, like really, my primary coaching clients is that person that is at, I don't know, 150 to 200 transactions. I know my niche, right? 200 transactions and they want to go to 1,000. That for me is my, like, where my passion is. It doesn't mean that I don't love the 1,000 to 2,000 CEO type, but I love that leader that's like increasing their LQ, building the team, learning how to recruit, having the right organizational model, you know, like like moving from in production to leader who is leading and still less in production. And now I'm 15% of production. Now I'm completely out. I love that transition. It's where my heart is from a coaching standpoint. So, okay. So here's what I've noticed, right? Okay. Being a great salesperson does not automatically equate over to you being a great leader. It doesn't mean you can't. But if you look at all of these incredible individuals that have leveled up as leaders and their team have grown, has grown alongside with them, and they've done it effectively and profitably. They attacked when they were in sales, learning presentation models, follow-up systems, dialogues, how I'm going to follow my schedule, et cetera. They learned it at a very deep level. When they moved over into becoming a leader, they took that same fire that they had on learning how to be a great salesperson, and they put it over into learning how to be a great leader as well too. Because the two, although there are certain similarities, they're both sales, right? You're selling people and selling process. There's new strategies and skills that are necessary as a leader that you don't have as a real estate salesperson going out. And you probably can talk to this even better than I can about that, of what you've seen. So that's number one, is if you're going to move into a leadership role, you have to, whether you're becoming a sales manager, whether you're growing your own team, right? You have to be studying, getting coached on, getting insight from, mentorship, listening to, going to events where you learn how to lead people, because my friends, it's just a different game, right?
I want to interject so everyone really hears this, and what Bill's just articulated to you is the bridging of the gap, is because there's a ton of people he has coached, continues to coach, that they went down, they mastered every skill so they could sell. But now what he's talking about is transference of what they have. And here's what Bill said, though. Now they had to go into another educational space of learning how to transfer that.
Yes.
You can't just tell people. So I just want to make sure they heard that. Sure, it's great. You've mastered every skill to sell. But now what he's sharing with you is you've got to go on this journey of investing in someone that can support you. And now how do you serve as a vessel? And I want to point one other thing out that Bill's doing, because many people are watching this during his 12-week course, which, by the way, at the recording of it, now you may watch this months from now or a year from now, but right now, the recording of this, us releasing it, people can still jump in. So you can hit us up for details on that. But here's one of the things I want to tell everyone. Those of you in the course, do two things. Listen to gather the education and the information, but I want you to watch. Bill is modeling leadership for you. He's modeling, look at how he presents it. So sorry, I just make sure that they see that, Bill, because there's two things you get from Bill. You get content and you get modeling. And that's the kicker.
And all the leaders can watch how I'm engaging and how you engage in Facebook, how I'm engaging in the Facebook group, now here's number two. So there's a couple of components here. Number one is they take the time to invest in a separate educational track of becoming a leader, raising what I call their LQ, their leadership quotient, right? Okay. And there's a bunch of components to that. Number two, though, they can, and you said it best, they can transfer the skills and discipline that got them to be a successful agent over to their team. And the reason they can do that is A, they built the skill to do it through coaching and training their team, but B, they have synthesized and codified, here's how we do it on our team, right? Here is our open house model. Here is how we go on a listing presentation. This is how we do a buyer consult. This is how we actually talk to a lead. They have codified the dialogues, conversations, and strategies, because you cannot transfer something that is not synthesized. And a lot of times what happens, I think, for great agents is they get the people on their team because they're so overwhelmed and they've got so much business and they've done a great job at marketing, right? And their database is popping off, like, because of the service that they've provided over the years. And then they bring the team on and they go, they pigeon lead. They come in, they poop over everything, and then they fly away, right? And it's not because they're horrible people. It's because they haven't taken the time to actually really lay out, this is the blasey real estate way of doing something. So those teams that do have that synthesized, when someone comes on board, then they can train to that on the onboarding. They can say, you're going to learn today how we do our open houses, right? And this is step by step. Now, understand that's an outline. People will follow it 70 to 80% of the time, but that 70 to 80%, right? You're guaranteeing that they're doing it in a manner that is consistent with your brand. And I said this in Nashville, as much as your marketing drives your brand, the people on your team drive your brand so much,
Yeah.
So that's number two. I got one more, and then
good. Yeah, because you get my mind going here. I'm like, okay.
Go, dude, jump. I'd love to hear from you on this. Like, please. So
no, go for it. Keep going. I want to hear what's next.
Number three, integrity is power. What that means is, from a leadership standpoint, it's easier for you to transfer the skill of following a schedule and hold people accountable to a schedule, when you are following a schedule. It's easier for you to develop a culture of prospecting as a leader because you prospected, right? Or continue to prospect. You're just prospecting for people, right? And leverage versus listings, right? When kids model the behaviors of their parents, right? I know some of us don't want to hear that, because when my kids are being jerky, I want to blame it on somebody else. But then all of a sudden I go and look in the mirror and I go, yep, she was just like you. That would be my daughter, who is just like me when she's like giving me rebuttals and debating with me and everything else. I'm like, I don't know where she got that. Right. So I've always said this to my coaches, because I also, coached 164 coaches and the mentors of those coaches in the past. I said, we coach to and hold accountable to who we are, not what we know. I'm going to say that again. We coach to and hold accountable to who we are, not what we know. And as a leader, if you haven't prospected and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, go take that hill over there, right? And I'll be right behind you guys, versus grabbing the flag, running up the hill, saying, I'm going to plan it with you guys. People get on board behind a leader that is in the trenches to a certain degree with them, and has integrity in what he or she is asking the team to do. Okay.
Well, let me ask you right now too. And so this even comes up stronger than the question I did have is, do you think there is any greater time than we've seen times before, periods, but would you say this is one of those times where the team leader, broker, owner is going to have to demonstrate and be doing it next to people like they haven't had to for 10 years?
110%.
That, Bill.
110%. Because let's be really honest, guys, we have not had to do a lot of prospecting. Like, we really haven't. John, I think you put it best on one of the calls that we had. And I mean this with full respect to everyone. We have become an industry of spoiled, rotten brats, right? Where businesses just flowed our way, right? Because the interest rates were so low. The millennial buyers, 2021 and 2022 are their peak years for buying a house. That's according to NAR. So really it was, okay. There's one time I went fly fishing and my buddies took me to this place called, I can't name it, but we call it the Holy Water here. And John, I'll take you here sometime. They had first time they took me, they blindfolded me. That's how secret it is. Right. And then once I was trusted not to say anything. Right. And in fact, I went in, it's really funny. I went in to actually get some flies about a month and a half later. The guy said, where you're going? I'm going to such and such. And he looked at me like, honestly, the guide looked at me who was getting the flies for me. He goes, we don't talk about that place. Right. I'm like, sorry. Right. There was a time I went there, and this is not a fishing story. This is legit. We call it.
It is, but it's not.
It is a fishing story, but it's not and it was this big, right? I caught 24 easily. They were over 20-inch, maybe some were 17, 18. It was these big German browns. It was spawning. I mean, I honestly, by the time we were done fishing, I was hoping not to get a fish on because my arm was tired. I was just whatever. Right. And my buddy came up to me, put his arm around me, and he goes, I want you to know something. I go, what? He goes, this isn't real. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you can't expect this every single time. Right. And I've taken my kids fishing to fisheries where they just were like catching fish left and right. And I did the same thing. I put my arm around Liam and I go, bro, this isn't real. You cannot expect this. Well, here's what I want to do. Uncle Bill wants to lovingly put his arm around you and tell you what you guys have seen these last couple of years. This ain't real. It was real. And it was great. It was real great. However, to have an expectation that this robustness of a market is going to continue without you building skills and having disciplines and prospecting, it's just not real, And so the leaders, for all of our leaders, you're going to have to jump into the trenches with your team and show them, not tell them what it is that they need to do, because a lot of them don't know anything about the level of intensity and discipline and grit that it's going to take. And you said it, Chep. You said there's three agents. And I said, it's the three little pigs. You got is your house built of straw? Is your house built of wood? Or is your house built of bricks? And those are your disciplines and skills. Is what you built your house of real estate out of. So you really need to look at that. And from a leadership standpoint, I think we got a lot of teams built on straws and wood right now. And you need to build the bricks, getting down and dirty with your team, showing them how to do it alongside. And you do that, they'll never leave you. Right. So
one more quick question on team leaders, because I think this one will really resonate. You've run into the control freak, and that can be just a big barrier for team leaders' growth. How have you been able to break leaders? I mean, ultimately they make their choices. We can't make anyone do anything, but talk about a couple of experiences you've had where someone was an absolute control freak, and no one can do it as good as me. Oh, that's great leadership. I mean, yeah. and I'm going to control the consumer experience. Okay, that's great leadership. Talk about scenarios like that, because I think, Bill, in my experience, maybe not, but I think that's been one of the biggest barriers to people that just never grow their team or brokerage.
I'm sitting here looking at my pictures of my kids on the wall, right? And reminds me, because I had a team, right? Back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, we had a team. We were here in Salt Lake, grew it to all of Utah, moved over to Silicon Valley, jumped down. We like when everyone was like starting to talk satellite teams, we were on the forefront of that. We were talking ISAs. We were on the forefront of that. We were really tripping over ourselves, just figuring it out, because there were no models out there at that point. Right. And, the reason I think about my kids is I'm looking at this and thinking back to the team that I had and the teams that I coach is this. I think that for myself, I'll just speak for myself. I think it's easier for me to do that. And then I can translate it over to some people that I've coached. Sure. We're so afraid, or we want our team to get it right, whether it's admin or whether it is sales. We either want or expect them to get it right at the very beginning, and we don't give them the space to be able to make mistakes. Right. Mm-hmm. And really in those mistakes and the coaching that comes out of that and the support that you have the opportunity to be able to provide, is how you create growth for somebody. We have a rule at my house, and this is me looking at my kids. I think about my son. He did something last night I was not too happy about. So I had a conversation with him, and maybe he's a 15-year-old dude. So, and we have a rule in my house, which is it's okay to make a mistake as long as two things happen. Number one, you grow and get a lesson from it. And number two, you don't make that same mistake twice. That's a rule in my household, right? It's a rule with my kids. It's a approach that I take with the people that I coach. I've unfortunately have found that the team leads that are control freaks have their expectation to be able to have their team get it right at the very beginning. And then when they don't get it right at the very beginning, they say that there's something wrong. And then they go, you know what, then I can just do it better than they can. I'm taking everything back myself. And what they don't recognize and what they've forgotten, John, is all the mess ups. I almost said F ups, all the mess ups that they've had in their career to get to the point where they can now do it better than everybody else. You've got to be willing to let the team, grow. And in order for them to grow, they've got to be able to make mistakes. My motto is progress over perfection. I got that from Laird Hamilton, the great surfer. When he released his movie, Riding Giants, I was down at the Hard Rock Cafe in Newport Beach. And my friend who was the marketing director for Vans got me a ticket, and I walked into the bar, and there was Laird Hamilton. She goes, "Do you want to meet him?" I'm like, "Oh my God, dude." And I sat down next to him. I go, "Dude," and for those of you that don't know Laird Hamilton, watch a movie called Riding Giants, another one called Step Into Liquid. He's in both of them. He's arguably one of the greatest athletes, greatest surfer. He and Kelly Slater, like in two different realms, Kelly for the competitive surfing, Laird for big wave surfing and innovation. Anyway, here's what he said. I sat down next to him, super nervous. I'm not sure if you guys ever had that where like and my friend says, "You're a professional speaker, for Christ's sake. Why are you nervous?" I'm like, right. And I asked him, introduced myself, had a conversation. And I said, I'm really respectful of everything that you do from your windsurfing and to, the tow-in surfing creation to paddle boarding and everything that you've been involved in. And I said, and he says, "What's your name?" I go, "My name is Bill Pipes." He goes, "Well, what do you do, Bill?" I go, "I'm a professional speaker and sales trainer." He goes, "That's exciting. I remember that." And I'm like, okay, whatever. You freaking ride 80-foot waves. And I asked him, John, I said, can you tell me, because I speak to anywhere from 500 to 2 to 7,000 people at a time, can you give me a bit of advice that I could bring back to them that you think would be valuable to them about success? And he said to me, he goes, he paused, and I love this because when he paused, I knew he was really giving it some thought, right? And he turned to me and he goes, I've been so successful because when I start something, then I realize this is something new. This is a 6 to 12 month process for me to truly get good at this, right? And maybe even longer. He goes, most people will start something on a Tuesday. I remember this like it was yesterday. They'll start something on a Tuesday and they expect within 2 weeks to be masterful at it. And then either they get frustrated or they give up. He goes, I just outlast everyone. And I went, wow, don't you get frustrated? He said, yes. And this is the point of this entire story for you guys. He said, but what I tell myself is this: success in life is all about progress, not perfection. And if I can get better every single day, if your team can get better every single day, if you can improve as a leader every single day, because you're going to make mistakes as a leader, right? Or as a salesperson on a listing presentation or converting a buyer over, you're going to miss opportunity. Learn from it. Don't make the same mistake twice. That's why I've been able to coach so effectively, is because I'll give a little bit of rope, right? And make sure that the mistake is not going to be a big one. But sometimes you got to touch the stove and burn your finger, no matter how many times your parents tell you it's hot. So I hope that answers the question. It's a very long.
Well, I love it though. It is, and I outlast everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking about, and it really resonated with you because coaching and training, as much as you've seen that differentiator, and it just, it's always the simple stuff that solves I outlast everyone. I got my big lesson there. Talk about this. It was one of the things that was really interesting when I was introduced to you and got to chat. The one thing that, you're working with your craft is sales skills and prospecting skills. I mean, that is your craft, and you work at it. And like the best in the world that are my clients, and I say that graciously, you work with the best in the world. They're just coming back after a week with you and their agents and just going bananas. We're talking about the number ones in the world, number twos in the world.
It's humbling. Bro, it's humbling. I got to tell you, it is humbling to see the feedback. And I'm just so grateful that it's landing. I'm so grateful.
Yeah. So you've worked with their team members over the years. You're doing it right now in week 1 and 11 more weeks. And by the way, there's a 3-day live sales mastery course that might be in the near future, but we'll just leave that here.
Yeah,
okay. An in-person bananas event, but we'll leave that one for you there. Future Pacia. So you've got their agents, you're working on building their skill sets, you're working on that team leader, but they're an or broker owner. But then you talked about that one agent that you like to get them to, because you like to stay down in the trenches. You'll do the big sales trainings and group stuff, but like, I think what you said, I like to keep 4 or 5 agents I work with that I think it's trying to get into that first million. Talk about that one agent. And the reason that you want to do it and what it takes to do it. Go into that one, Bill, because that's one thing that really sticks out to me is, I'm past that. No, you're further from past that. Talk to me about that person.
For the last 5 years, 6 years, right? Since I've really leveled into this, I'm at 200 units. I'm at 500 units. I want to get to 1,000. I'd love to say that this was something that I learned, that I automatically did, but I learned it because of something. And I was leading an event, a sales training event, and I started to notice that I wasn't as connected with the audience. And I'm like, I wonder what's going on there.
So your message, you could feel your message was going over
like a 747 over their head. So I guess I'm dating myself because they don't even make 747s anymore. I think they're used for mail at this point, but yeah. And it was just a lack of connection. And fortunately, there, like I was aware enough to be able to actually notice it. Right. And I felt it. And I got done with that event, and that event was we all have like mediocre, great, amazing type of presentations or whatever. This was a mediocre event for me. And if one thing drives me crazy, it's mediocrity in terms of my own pressure that I put on myself to be able to actually contribute. And so I got done with that. And I really, on the flight home from Dallas is where I was, right? I was downtown Dallas at, I forget what the hotel was, but I was flying home. I said, when did that happen? Right. And I encourage you all to look at this as well, too. Like when something doesn't go well on your presentation, when something doesn't go well with your team, when something doesn't go well on a lead, like really take the time to be able to, Tim Grover, the great like personal trainer for Michael Jordan and for Kobe Bryant. If you haven't read his book, Relentless or Winning, either of those two are great. I've gotten the chance to actually spend some time with Tim. And Tim said this, he said, when the greats get knocked down, what do you think they do, Bill? And I'm like, well, of course they get right back up. Right. He's like, no, they stay down for a second. And that like surprised me. I'm like, what do you mean they stay down? He goes, they stay down and they think, why did this happen? What do I need to change to be able to actually make sure it doesn't? How am I going to adjust my approach? Right. Which was huge for me. So that's what I was doing on that flight back. And what I noticed was everyone that I was coaching was in that 150, 175 to 900 transaction range. And I had lost I'd gotten what I call ivory tower effect, where I was just in this silo with all these incredible, and I love it. I mean, I still, like absolutely love it. But I said, I'm losing my touch with the agent that's doing 20, 15 transactions, the needs and the wants and the desires and the challenges, the problems, the difficulties that they have, which is the largest portion of the population. If I don't continue to consult and coach at least a handful of individuals at that level, then I'm going to completely lose my touch, my ability to be able to contribute to the largest segment of the population of real estate. And so every year I take on, and have for the last 5 years, 2 to 3 people that are in that 15 to 30 transaction range. And then and I know it's like my game at that point is, now listen, these are highly, highly committed individuals. When they come to work with me, I say, you're going to do everything that I say. I don't want to have any put. I know that sounds like very dictatorial, right? But I'm like, if we're going to work together, you got to trust that I'm never going to do anything that's going to harm your business. So therefore, do everything that I say. If you're willing to do that and you're super committed, let's go. And this last year, I had 6 of those groups over the years that just broke $1 million. And so what I found is I could take someone at that level who's committed, it will do everything that I say, is it like totally coachable. Within 2 to 3 years, I can get them to that we can get to $1 million together, working together. Right. And it kept me, I noticed on my events, because I was still plugged in, it kept me relevant and engaged and connected with that segment of the real estate market, which I think is so, so important.
Really good. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, we got to touch on, agents and what they need to be doing and focusing on, where they're falling down and where they're doing well, et cetera. Look at it, a team leader's participation, and just going down to the basics of
let me say one last thing, if I could, John, because sure. I think we leave that last conversation. It's an open loop if we don't close it off right here, because a lot of people in their brain are probably in that section of 15 to 30 transactions going, well, what do they do to get to $1 million? Right? Skills. They build their skills first of all. Number 2, they go from typically having 1 lead source that they work in to 4 to 5 that they built out, that they have a strategy in. They go from not really following a schedule to having a diligent schedule. And eventually they move into hiring their first assistant, right? And doing that the proper way versus hiring their friends and it being a shit show, right? And then at some point they begin to bring on team members. That is the progression. Skills, discipline and behaviors, having multiple strategies and marketing campaigns, and having the skills to be able to convert those leads generated from the marketing campaigns and strategies, learning how to hire intelligently, which is, John, no one does it better in the world than you and Dan do with this. I mean, it's just insane. And then the last is then how to be able to lead that Navy SEAL 1, 2, 3 person team. And with that, they get to $1 million, and they do it in a very high profit margin, standpoint. So that's the overview. I didn't want to leave that just dangling out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
No, thank you. What so what I'm hearing you say is for the team leader, the broker owner manager, they've got to, in this marketplace. I mean, you know what's interesting is, I think these principles are constant, but different marketplaces allow us to kind of not be as intentional about it. But what I heard you say is leaders need to be focused on modeling and walking the talk, not being a talking head
100%.
in this marketplace. Is that fair to say? That would be number one.
100%. Because there's going to be a lot of your agents that are going to experience legitimate fear. It's happening right now. Like
paralyzed.
Yeah, for sure. I can smell the fear in the marketplace. I was at a party on Friday night with a bunch of other real estate agents. And I'm going to tell you right now, I had a lot of people who obviously know what it is that I do. And because they're my friends, come up going, what do you think's happening right now? Like I honestly was like, I just want to dance to the band right now, but for sure, let's talk, right? Here's what you need to do. And I had the same conversation over and over, probably about 5 or 6 times with agents that were inside that room here in Salt Lake City that were coming to me saying, have you noticed change? What are you seeing nationally? What do you got your clients doing? What do I need to do? So there's some fear. And remember, fear is a secondary emotion. It is a necessary emotion because it forces you to change. But behind fear, and you and I talked about this, John, is a lack of preparation. Because if you're prepared and you've done what you need to do, that fear, although it will always be there just a little bit, because that's how we're wired, you'll be able to overcome that very quickly. And you'll be celebratory about the shifts and the change in the market. When everyone else is bitching and complaining and moaning and whatever, you will be serving more people, cashing more checks, selling more homes, and have happier clients because of the work that you did prior to.
Yeah, really, really good. Final one I want to add on, though, just to reiterate, real estate agent, the individual agent, and not that an agent on a team is an individual agent. They're entrepreneurial within a team.
Sure.
If you look at an individual agent, you're on a team too. You're on the brand or broker's team. Yeah. It's just a different modeling. What are you just like obsessed with initiative and focus, sharing with the agents, someone that's down there in the trenches? What is the single most important thing they've got to focus on right now?
If you're a listing-based agent, I'm going to separate this if it's okay. Okay. Because, I think we've got,
you're the pro, man. You tell us.
Yeah. I think there's 3 different types of agents as individual agents. There's those agents that primarily work with buyers. There's the hybrid agent that actually has, a balanced buy list business. And then there's the listing, there's the agent out there that, 75% of their business is listings and, 25% are buyers. So I'm going to talk to the listing agent. Go back to your presentation. Go start to refine that, because pricing is going to become an issue again. And right now, I mean, honestly, the pricing portion of the presentation in the last 24 months was, what do you want to price it at? And as long as that was within a 10% price range, you're like, sure, the market will catch up with it. Instead of us getting 20 offers, we'll get 5 or 6. The shit will still sell. Well, I've always found that what I call the shoulder market for listing agents is one of the most challenging markets, because the consumer, what the shoulder section of the market is where everything's beginning to change, but the consumer is the last to really figure it out. The homeowner is, because they want to believe that the house is still worth more. Well, your skill of being able to present price and also back that price up with market data, market trends, and legit comparables, and to be able to do that and handle objections, that is going to drive everything, right? That's going to drive you being able to get the home price to the point where you still can get multiple offers. Because remember, September, October of last year, houses were sitting longer. Right. And it was sitting longer because the agents were still using an old pricing model in a new evolving market. So that's what I'm beginning to see right now. And when your presentation is strong, it impacts everything else. You want to prospect because you feel comfortable to put yourself in a position to present. You want to follow up on leads. You close harder to get those appointments. If your presentation is weak, it affects everything because you're afraid to put yourself in a position where you won't be able to handle the objections or be able to actually fulfill upon the promises you're making. That's for the selling agent, for the list side. On the buy side, you now need to be able to actually create urgency for the buyers, right? Because as interest rates go up, you have to create certainty that this is not, and I will say this will not be a declining market. What will happen is we're going to go from February 2020 to February 2021. It was almost a 17% annual year-over-year appreciation in price for United States of America. Unheard of. Never would I in my entire life think that we would have seen almost an 18% value appreciation nationally. We're going to skip back to 6-7%, which is still above norm of 3-4%, but it's going to feel like we've gone backwards because we've been at such a fast. It's like when you run on the treadmill at 9.0, right? And you're doing like HIIT training and then you pull back to 6 and you're like, oh man, I feel like I'm going so slow. But if you start at 0 and go to 6.0 on the treadmill, it feels like you're running fast. But that variance of going from 9 to 6 on the treadmill makes it feel like you're standing still. This market will feel for some people like it's standing still. You need to be able to actually control the narrative with your buyers to be able to create the urgency and the certainty for them to be able to move forward as well too. Those are the 2 skills that I see that are necessary.
It's awesome. Bill, we're going to do this a bunch. We're going to do a lot of things a bunch. It's a privilege
for sure, man.
To spend time with you, to be in a business relationship with you that is rooted in not only an alignment, but agreement that's to serve the masses. You bring an amazing skill set that I have a great regard and respect for, and I know all the people watching and or listening, podcast, YouTube, wherever you're catching us. I want to give you guys a couple things. The 12-week program, if you get on this earlier enough, you can jump in, grab the recordings, all 12 weeks of the recordings you get. You can still jump in live, possibly right now. Well, you can today for some future sessions. Agent Academy salesvelocity.com, Agent Academy salesvelocity.com. If you would like to explore coaching with Bill one-on-one, and what's wonderful is you've got a great opportunity to see just the tip of the iceberg of his brilliance and his heart. You can go to bill.agentacademycoaching.com and complete the questionnaire and schedule a discovery call. And the last thing I'll leave you all with, stay tuned for the 3-day Sales Mastery course live in person that is going to be unbelievable, because the single most important thing for me in the work that I do is to find those that are much more talented than me. And I get the privilege of doing the work that I do because I've done that really, really well. I've found people with great talent, greater talents than me, and do my darndest to bring them forward. And I think I've kind of done that here with Bill. Brother, appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you. And for all of you, you're in the right place. It's just different over here. Like it's amazing to actually see the impact that has taken place. And we're all here to support. So thank you, John, so much for doing modeling. You want to talk modeling, great leadership. What John has done with me in modeling and giving me the freedom to create for all of you is exactly what you guys need to be doing for your team. So thank you, John. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it, brother.